Right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Wednesday Bike Club. It feels like I haven't done one of these properly for a little while. This is going to be a sort of moving, riding one. And it's going to be a sort of tale of woe, really. A sort of sorry tale of... And it links back a little bit to when I was on the Isle of Wight, you know, with the powerful few overriding the majority. But it's to do with... I suppose it's a tale of two... biker cafes, really. One that's doing really well and one that was killed off for a very specific reason. I thought I'd bring you to one of the landmarks of this place, and which is in incredible flood at the moment. Let's go and have a look. Come on. Don't want to get my feet wet. So, welcome to the Wednesday Bike Club. And it feels like I haven't done a proper Wednesday Bike Club for a little while. So, it'd be nice to do a chat. And I'm keeping my lid on because we're going to go for a little ride in a minute. I'm going to take you from here. And you see, we're on the bridge here at Pulborough over the River Arun. And you see it's more of a sea than a river. God, we've had some weather, haven't we? We really have. And the tide's going out, so this is going to be higher than that. I was lucky to actually get up onto here. Because that area down there is sort of generally underwater. Anyway, on with the discussion. So what are we talking about? So it's sort of a tale of two councils, really, and a tale of two biker cafes. So you had Rykas, which is in Surrey, and that's about 20 miles from here. And then you have Whiteways. So you have two biker cafes, and particularly at the weekends, you know, incredibly busy. You know, people will go from Rykas, they go down to A24, 29, and then they make their way to Whiteways, and you know, have a coffee at either end. You know, and they were both really well attended. You know, particularly at weekends during the summer, fantastic. And Whiteways would do evening events during the week, and the same as Rykas. You know, and why I mean it's a tale of two councils, and why I wanted to do this little video is because it going to the Isle of Wight reminded me of this, and it was the situation where you had, you know, the Isle of Wight TT wanted to be formed, and it was the council and a few powerful few that decided that wasn't going to go ahead when it would have been fantastic for the island, and the islanders wanted it, you know, and a few people brought it up. I think it's 16 years they were pushing for that, 16 years, and then it got kicked out. But it's that thing about the powerful few having influence and say over the, you know, the majority. And this is a sorry tale that's happened here. So, you know, yes, you had situations where didn't seem to get any issues in Surrey, but in Sussex, the council and certainly pressure groups in the areas in Sussex where the bikers would come on 28, 24 and 29, would complain, and they would complain about the noise of the bikes. And yes, without doubt, you would get noisy bikes at a weekend, you know, sort of screaming around. So obviously the pressure groups that were being formed, particularly I think there was a couple of tame councillors within those groups, you know, that lived in the area and thought, well, we'll take this up, this would be great, you know, we'll sort this out. So what happened first? Let's go through the process of what happened first. So we had speed limits on these roads, you know, between the two, and there were certain areas, particularly coming away from Dorking, you know, where you had roads which were 50 mile an hour, dual carriageways, were then reduced to 40 miles an hour. You had roads on the A29 which were, you know, 50 miles an hour reduced to 40, and the 40s reduced to 30s. Of course, you know, you've got to be stupid to think that it's not the law-abiding citizens who are breaking speed limits. You could have a 10 mile an hour speed limit, but there will always be someone who do 110 down there. You know, that's because they're breaking the law. It doesn't matter what your speed restriction or speed limit is. You know, people that break the speed limits regardless. So that had a very small effect, really. You know, and the police, at the end of the day, you know, they've got to poke up with this, haven't they? So they, you know, they'll be down there with cameras and all the rest of it, and, you know, catching a few people, I suppose. People hadn't realised, you know, the first few might get away with it, might they? So what I didn't know is it had gone down to 40. The problem with speed restrictions is that if you're trying to slow people down, you know, going through your little hamlet or your little village, whatever it is, to my mind, that's counterproductive, because what happens is that you end up with a large volume of traffic going slower through your area, for your village, whatever it is, and taking longer and causing disturbance for longer. You know, you'll have situations where you have big heavy goods lorries. You might want to keep their main speed up, but they can't. They've now got to slow down. They've got to drop a gear, and it just takes them long to pass through, causes more pollution in that respect. So I've always thought that, you know, speed restrictions, they serve no purpose. It's like anything. You can put as many you can create as many new laws as you like, but if no one there to enforce it, it makes no odds. And that's where we are these days, isn't it, really? And speed restrictions do that. And all you find people that live in Wales, you know, Mike from sunny Wales, you know this, you know, you have 20-mile-an-hour speed restrictions. It doesn't stop people speeding. But all it does, it makes law-abiding people have to travel slower through those areas. Takes too long to get through, creates more congestion, more pollution, more noise for longer. You know, I've never really understood that policy. Anyway, we had that here. So, you know, we had speed restrictions. And I think the council's probably thought, oh, great, we're gonna slow the bikes down and all the rest of it. Of course, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. So we had situations where we tried to get more police speed checks in the area, that kind of thing. You know, that works for a certain amount of time, doesn't it? But you know, it is people flash you, don't they? Before they see a speed check, so you slow down at the appropriate time. But you know, it doesn't really work, does it? It really doesn't work. And I think we need to go on the road now and head towards what was the real nail in the coffin. You know, it wasn't the speed restrictions. Somebody come up with a great plan to really end this as a route for motorcyclists. But we'll take in a little bit of the route because it's still a lovely road, you know. And we see what the powers that be, these great intelligent people, what they did to finally put the nail in the coffin of the Rykas Whiteways ride, you know, which have been going for many, many years. Come on, let's go and have a look. Let's leave the geese to it because wow, that is underwater. When the tide comes in, it's going to be big. Come on, before we can't get out of here. Come on. Right, so here we go. So we're in the Arundel Valley, and it's lovely. You know, the Arundel Valley is a really lovely place, and you know, these roads are pretty good. Nice wide open spaces. Very few properties really, but the councils and the councillors and you know, the pressure groups really didn't want. I think there was a lot of pressure from areas that weren't really affected by this route, which was quite frustrating. There was an awful lot of pressure for people living in places like Petworth and stuff like that. But you know, I can remember riding through Petworth a few times, just chugging through, and people standing there holding their ears, and people shouting at you, and you just think, well, goodness sake, you know. And all you've done by reducing the speed limits is just, you know, heavy good vehicles going for longer, you know, which makes far more noise than motorcycles. But anyway, so you come up through the Arundel Valley out the other side, and the nice bit that you hit is Berry Hill. And Berry Hill was always the thing. I can remember we used to come up in the cars when we were kids, and you know, in our old Mark 1 Escort or something, you used to have to drop a gear, you know, see if you can keep your speed up. It was always amazing. It's such a steep gradient. It's amazing, really. And it's one of the places that did catch a few bikers out. It always catches a few motor cars out. But there's a couple of bends which are a little bit sort of progressive, I would call them, that tighten a little bit. And if you're not aware of it, you end up in the bushes. Right, so here we are at the base of Berry Hill, and you've got the Squire and Horse pub, which is a well-known landmark. It's beautiful around here. You've got little thatched cottages and all the rest of it. But this is where it really becomes a pain now. This is where your speed restriction really starts to come in, because they lowered this from 50 to 40, this hill. And I can imagine, you know, some of the lorry drivers probably thought, oh, for goodness sake, you know, because you've got to, you know, you've got to keep dropping gears. You've got to, it's actually quite hard to stick a 40 when 50 was better. You know, it means you could, on most bikes and cars, you know, you could maintain that in a certain gear and you could chug up there. But when you got to drop down now, this used to be the big run up. So you'd have a run up here, and then you'd hopefully get for the first couple of bends before you might have to drop a cog. Come on, let's go and have a look. Let's go and have a look at Berry Hill. We'll leave the Squire and Horse. I've never been in there actually. I think it's supposed to be a very nice pub. Come on, let's go and have a look at at Berry Hill. So there we are, 40 miles an hour. Amazing. And that's it. I don't change up because I'll have to just change down again. But you've got this lovely series of bends, and it's actually better going up than it is going down. I suppose because you can maintain power, and that's the thing. Yeah, so I think I'm in third at the moment, and sticking at 40. Always a bit of a bugger in the wet, this place, you know. But on a nice bike, you know, fantastic. Yeah, still wouldn't change down, or still wouldn't change up. Still stick it at 40. I don't know what the gradient is. It's pretty steep, this hill, though. It's pretty darn steep. Certainly hard for a lorry, this one. Right, once you get to that corner, now you can change up. Or if you can find a gear, that is. So there we are. Because the gradient's sort of, you know, leveled off a little bit. And you get a nice sort of sweep out of the actual thing, but we're still doing 40. Doing any more than that. But that was the next nail of the coffin, so there you are. Take it from 50 to 40. Of course, going downhill, keeping a 40 is hard work. And then you go from 40 into a nationals, and you know that you're on top of the downs now, which is lovely, isn't it? But that still wasn't enough to deter motorcyclists. You know, the councillors and the pressure groups still didn't have what they wanted. So they really had to put a final nail in the coffin. I thought, what can we do? I know what we'll do. And this really did kill it. Come on, let's have a look at this last bit. And here you have it. This is what they did. They shut the calf. There's 2 extra bits to this. I just think it's so sad. There's 2 extra bits to this. Right, let's get off the bike. So the other thing they tried to do, this car park, what they did, they tried to make this a pay car park. And they thought that will put motorcyclists. So who's going to come up and come here because you've got to pay to park your bike? Of course, well, they hadn't factored into that. Well, it was really hard to check people's number plates on motorbikes, and it didn't really work. So, of course, that deterred everybody else from coming up here. And that lasted a very short period of time. So we had the speed restrictions, then we had the car park, which ended up being a pay car park, and it's not a pay car park, it's free. Because all this area is owned by the Duke of Norfolk, which sounds odd, being in Sussex, but it's owned by the Duke of Norfolk, who owns Arundel Castle. So that was one thing that they tried. And when that didn't work, and we still had loads of motorbikes turning up, they decided, yes, let's just shut the CAF. Now, the cafe was operated by what they sort of called the Whiteways team. And it had been like this for about 20 years. And or they certainly had it for 20 years. And it was a very, very popular cafe, even for the walkers, because you could walk from here and all the rest of it. So the councillors and, you know, all those people had their wish. They got rid of the bikers, you know. And who did that help? Nobody really did it. You know, it lost one group of people their livelihood. You know, I hope they carried on and did something else. But you know what's really sad, and I think the most terrible thing out of all of this place was used as a, you'd come up during the week, or even the weekend, you'd have bikers, a bit like me, you know, or bikers that, you know, didn't have family or whatever it was, and they'd come up on their bikes and they would just talk. You know, they would just talk to other bikers that are in the same situation, just to a natter and a bit of company. You know, they grab a cup of tea, a bit of cake or Twix, you know, and they would just talk to each other. You know, they would just start a conversation, and just for some company, and that's the sad thing I think about this. It was a place you come to maybe for a bit of a confessional or just a chat, and that no longer exists. And how sad is that? You know how unkind is that to take away that little social gathering experience for people? You know, because those people just get blown to the wind and they disappear, and you know they just think, oh, I've got no one to talk to. Now, how often have you been somewhere and people just want to talk? You know, and it sort of links in a little bit with the you know, what Steve was doing when I was on the Isle of Wight. You know, this mental health thing. You know, and elderly people. You know, and people that don't get out much, but they just want some company with some like-minded people, just to have a chat, you know, reminisce and just talk with company. And they've lost that, all because people didn't like it. Right, well, there you go. There you go. Sorry tale of woe, isn't it? Don't put down on your Wednesday. I just bumped into a chap, and we were talking about, you know, exactly the thing I was telling you, you know, about this thing where you meet up with people, and you know, you just have a chat. You just have a chat, and you know, somebody else then walked up. Said, "Oh, the bikes don't cover anymore, do they? You know, there's nowhere to get a coffee." You know, and that's where you are with it. And it's that thing of, you know, the social aspect of coming out on a motorbike. It's being taken away from you by people that don't want you to have it. You know, they just don't want bikes here. They see you as the devil incarnate. What does that mean, devil incarnate? Good word, isn't it? But hey ho. So I will have to go and find somewhere for a coffee. We don't mind motorbikes turning up, and that'll be Fittleworth stores. It's a lovely day today. Quite chilly, but it's a lovely day. So I'm going to head down past. Where am I going to go? I'm going to head past the Roman Villa as I go back down the hill. This is the bit that catches everybody out, though. It's going downhill from here. Well, we've got to stick to 40. We've got to stick to 40. A few people have ended up in the bushes here. 11%. I think this hill is. That's what it says. 11%. Which I think is pretty steep, isn't it? Right. Thanks for watching, everybody. It'd be more upbeat. The next one will be more upbeat, I assure you. All right. Take care. And I'll see you next time. Look after yourselves. Wow, that river looks so swollen. Goodness me. All right. Take care. See you soon.